Jeez. I'm not quiet anymore. I should be fine now, right? Yeah, how's it going? I've never I don't know why I've never done this before. Which is just like to have a post video stream that's just me, like chatting to you guys. I'm not sure why. I think partly because I just like gaming, so I did fused it with gaming, or like I've got lots of guests that I want to speak to, and I just like sometimes if I'm doing a stream, I feel like, oh well, I should get one of the guests in because I've got such a long list of guests that I want to fucking like that I want to speak to. So, but anyway, no, this is good. More people do this. People do this a lot. So, yeah, I thought I'd give it a go. I know FD Signifier does a lot of these types of streams, apart from obviously streamers. So, yeah. So yeah, I think I don't know. We'll just see how it goes, right? Like, it's just fairly chilled stream, and I think I'm going to talk to somebody later. I'm going to talk to someone who quite a lot of you. My doorbell's just gone. Oh shit. Right, guys, forgive me. Let me go and get that. Give me a minute. Been sitting there for fucking ages, and of course the doorbell goes straight after I start the stream. What's this stream covering? I don't know. Like, it's just a Q&A. Like, any questions you've got, like about like free stuff, the video. Yeah, it's just like just wanted to see what people had to say about it. If they needed any like clarifying questions. Let me know what the setup's like visually for this as well, because I've got so my camera's like central, and it's not as wide as the entire screen. So I put this weird little background on. But then the chat, if I put the chat here, or even here, that kind of, I don't know if that works. I feel like it has to be kind of only on the one background and back. Oh, thank you so much, Post Scarcity Cat. That's a great name, by the way. You should Post Scarcity Cat. Judging by two aspects of your name, one that you're an anarchist, and two that you either are a cat or like cats, you should watch Lucky Black Cat's video about anarchism if you haven't. Lucky Black Cat 87. Check out her profile. She did like a 2.5 hour video on how anarchism / communism, I guess it's communism really, how that would work. Hey Yui, I'm from a pretty poor city in the US, and I'm interested in reading more about the policies you mentioned about UBI. Any starting points? Yeah, I think there's Scott Santens, who I cite in the video only once and only for a minor point, but he's a really interesting guy who's sort of taken it upon himself to oh, thank you for subscribing, somebody. That reminds me that I should put my fucking Streamlabs thing on here somewhere. Hey, there it was. Yeah, so Scott Santens, he's like he's a crusader. He's a crusader for a UBI. So he's got loads of Medium posts. He's got like a Patreon. I think he's got loads of supporters. And he's just written like about it from so many different perspectives, like trying to justify it. He hit like the positive externality angle, kind of like, look, you know, there's all this work that people do, mostly women, right? And they're doing care work. They're preparing children. They're caring for children, and preparing food. Yeah. So not the other way around. So that's just a bunch of fucking work that goes unremunerated, and there's all sorts of reasons, ethical reasons that you might want to remunerate it, but there's also kind of efficiency arguments, right, which was like the point of my video, right? It's like, it's one thing to say these things are good, and I think a lot of left-wingers agree, and even some right-wingers might agree. I mean, it's difficult to tell whether they're being disingenuous, right? But they might agree that, like, they'll say, look, these things are good. There was that clip I used right at the beginning of the video, right? Like, they'll be like, oh yeah, like, we like education, we like healthcare, right? But we don't think the state should provide it. And sometimes that's disingenuous. A lot of the time, maybe it's not so disingenuous. But I think the efficiency argument is a kind of unique one that doesn't get considered enough. And that kind of efficiency argument for like providing a subsidy, a universal basic income for women or anyone else who is actually engaging in care that's currently unremunerated is a novel one. At least, well, it's not. I mean, I didn't make it up, but I don't see it enough. But anyway, that was just me getting sidetracked talking about Scott Santens. So I think he has like so many interesting. Oh, geez. One of these days, I'll learn how to operate this fucking software. So Scott Santens on UBI, rural USA person whose name I've forgotten, and also Guy Standing wrote a book about universal basic income. There's the universal basic income guarantee. The universal, they literally just messaged me. The basic income guarantee. Basic Income Guarantee Conference. Oh no, they're just a conference. Okay. Well, anyway, you might want to look at this. Oh wait, that's just a completely different message that I've just sent to you in that was supposed to be my message to my guest. Slightly embarrassing, but it's obviously at least it wasn't like send nudes. 1 second. What? There's that Basic Income Guarantee Conference. So yeah, you've got Scott Santens online. If you want a book, Guy Standing wrote an entire book about it. And if you want a conference/organization, there's your conference/organization. So I think we've got all types of content covered there, right? Anyway, so are you familiar with Michael Roberts' blog? Yes, I am familiar with Michael Roberts' blog. I'm not a massive fan. It has to be said, because I don't believe in a lot of the stuff on the tendency of the rate of profit to fall. And I'm also not especially happy with some of his seeming CCCP apologia. I should say that's Chinese Communist Party. CCP, CCCCC. How many C's? About 6 probably. The Chinese Communist Party. I'm not implying anything else, by the way. I realise that acronym's a little bit dodgy. Why some people want to self-sabotage their own welfare? Yeah. I think... Oh, jeez. I think it's a really interesting question. I mean, it goes beyond my wheelhouse. I'm really shit at politics. I don't know anything about it. I think I was at a political science workshop the other day about... And this was raised, this issue... and I don't want to sound too like rote Chomsky fan, but I do think that just the portrayals in the media just make people think that it's just cheaters using these systems. And this thank you for subscribing and donating, Carl Carlson. Sorry for sniggering if that's your real name. It's just because it's the name of Carl in The Simpsons as well. Anyway, sorry. Yeah. So yeah, these depictions in the media, right? They're so fucking unfair. It's just like the one person who like somehow managed to cheat the welfare system and they got child benefit and housing benefit and unemployment benefit and sick benefit at the same time. Then they bought a fucking like 7-bedroom mansion. Yeah, you know, that does happen. If you want to find those examples, you can. But of course we know, I mean, in the UK, I think the relevant figure for benefit fraud is 0.5%. So you get people thinking that people who are getting welfare are, you know, just horrible scroungers, right? And then you get this other effect, which is like, and I think there's some evidence from the US. I wouldn't be able to tell you where it is. Maybe somebody in chat remembers, but like, there's this evidence that's like people saying things like "get government out of my Medicare," right, and stuff like that. And it's like, it's a government program, so people don't realize when they are using these programs, they don't think of themselves as welfare recipients, right? And I think, you know, this is one of the reasons that I'm pro universality, one of the political reasons, right? Because it's just like, if everybody benefits from a program, then it's impossible to stigmatize the other who doesn't benefit from the program. If you've got like Andrew Yang, you know, he's got a lot of bad ideas, but I quite like his idea of calling universal basic income, if I'm getting this right, I think he said it was like a citizen's dividend. He might have also said freedom dividend, which is very American, but like a citizen's income or something like that. I kind of like that. Then it's like, okay, you're a citizen, you know, so you get it. That's pretty simple, right? So I think that kind of dynamic, and this is why I don't, means testing can sound good, and there are economic reasons that it isn't good, but also there are political reasons that it isn't good. And even if you could persuade me that, you know, there are one or two examples, like student loans might be one where it seems like, or higher education, I should say, could be one where it seems like, maybe we should tax those people who had that education to pay for it. You can kind of see the argument there, but it's like, no, because once you start introducing those, you start splitting people up into different political constituencies. Hello, Rebecca Ed. On convincing these right-wingers that, well, I mean, OAJ 2015, I think that my video was kind of an attempt to do that. I don't know how many right-wingers watch me. I think the answer's some. I don't think it's loads, because, you know, that's the way it be. But yeah, so I think my aim in the video is, because I could make a video about welfare and, you know, state provision that looked very different, that only persuaded leftists. But I think making the efficiency argument, which I was going into detail on in the context of UBI just now, making the efficiency argument is like maybe one that maybe more centrists or centre-right people, not, you know, full-on right-wingers, are maybe a different cup of tea. And there's, I mean, I don't know how to convince them, but the efficiency argument is an attempt to bring people in who are maybe like, government is inefficient, you know, I don't believe in government as a matter of course. So that was one attempt. I mean, another, you know, and I go back and forth on this, is like the nationalistic argument. I know that, you know, for example, Trump, if you take Trump supporters, right, we know that they're not like neoliberals, right? Trump supporters aren't. They were against the TPP trade agreement, right? They were pro kind of America first industrial policy. Now, I don't like the politics that comes with that, but you can ask yourself, you know, is there a type of nationalism that we can pursue that's maybe a bit more inclusive, that is economic nationalism but not political nationalism? And I don't have an answer to that. I know it's a dangerous territory. I'm not saying, you know, agree with Trump, but I'm just saying maybe there's something we can do there. Yeah, Resthia. I kind of understand where you're coming from. A lot of, when you see, I mean, I mentioned Andrew Yang earlier, right? Like, and he has kind of acknowledged, or he sold the UBI as like a replacement for everything. And it's like, no. It's a replacement for some things. It's a replacement for transfers, right? Obviously, there's no need to have unemployment insurance, really, I don't think, if you've got UBI. There's no need to have maybe pensions. There's no need to have money for students. Thanks for signing up, name that I can't say. So yeah, so there are obvious transfers you can replace, right? But then to say it's replacing any services, you know, like to say it's replacing the NHS in the UK, to say it's replacing like schools, you know, or in the student loan system entirely. I'm not sure I would like that. So, but I don't know. I mean, there's different. The thing is, right? It's I get that point of view, but I think that anything. People say like, oh, well, you can't have UBI because neoliberals will just hijack it, right? And I think with anything, it's like that can be done to anything, right? It can be done to services as well. Like, look at the private contractors brought in the UK, in the NHS, in schools as well, and in like just basically in the Olympics they were brought in for like security. You can bring private contractors into anything. You can corrupt anything with giving stuff away to your mates. They did it with the fucking COVID measures the Tories did, right? So it's like it's bad, corrupt, right-wing governments that are doing these things, and we have to defeat them. I think that would be my intuition. But yeah, absolutely don't accept arguments for UBI as a replacement. I have an opinion on Andrew Yang. Oh, I feel like I already answered that one. Did you look at UBS instead of UBI? See, again, I think I'm always saying why not both? You know, the why not both meme. Thanks for subscribing, the Bishop. So yeah, I think they're both affordable. I think UBI is like a floor under your standard of living. I think that UBS provides you with, basic services that you need to, live if it's healthcare, but also just to participate in modern society and economies if it's education, as well as like, various other services. I mean, if you're counting transport in that, for instance. You subscribed again, the Bishop. Wow, you like it so much. You subscribed twice. Carl, I only just monetized my channel because I'm moving to this full time. So I was like, I didn't enable mid-video ads. You'll be pleased to know. But I was thinking that there would be fewer ads if I didn't monetize my channel. And my producer was like, no, I don't think that's the case. I think you've got ads already, like I've seen them. So there are still ads at the beginning, but I've monetized those. But I haven't added mid-video ads. But anyway, the donate button also appears when you do that. I don't know how much of that goes directly to me. I would have to well, I have to see. Mainstream perception on the labour market and how useless jobs exist. God, I don't know. I wouldn't know where to start with that. I mean, maybe it sounds like. I mean, Destroyer. That's a great name, by the way. I like in World of Warcraft in particular. I like naming my characters like the kind of name that like a 12-year-old who can't spell names them. I always think that's the best type of World of Warcraft name. So yeah, yours reminds me of that. Yeah, but you know that I don't. My videos aren't usually that specific. I mean, the Uber one was arguably, but it ended up getting broad on surge pricing by Uber. But it ended up talking about dynamic pricing in general, and the next one will be about planned obsolescence, which is again quite a narrow topic, right? So maybe more of those will come. And yeah, labour markets, rethinking the nature of work. It's such an interesting topic. I wouldn't rule it out. But I wouldn't hold your breath either. Again, if you watch my videos, you know what the time frame's like. And we've got planned obsolescence, and then we've got Thomas Sowell to go. All right. So before, it'd have to be after those two. I also want to do another the death of ones, like the death of Econ 101. That was supposed to be the start of a series. Well, it was. I just take a long time to make videos, and there'll be like, I think, the death of macroeconomics. I think the death of rationality, like the economist's notion of rationality, or homo economicus, some people sometimes call it. The death of pop economics, like freakonomics and stuff. So there's a lot of fucking shit on my list. All right, that's what I'm saying. So I would like to talk about that, and I probably will at some point. But when and in what capacity, whether it's part of a longer video or it's just its own video, I couldn't possibly say. Costa Rica, Mr. Emaphon. I wish I could say more. I mean, Costa Rica is one of those countries that quite a lot of ecological economists, like I think Kate Raworth and Jason Hickel, they tend to kind of hold it up as a good example of a country that's living within its ecological means while having a fairly decent per capita income. So I'm sorry to hear that things are, going south. I mean, has that been a result of the pandemic, or you'd have to give me a little bit more information? But look, the policy space in any country like Costa Rica, which is to say a middle income country in Latin America or Africa, is very limited because of currency, right? So it's like you just because of your currencies being weaker, you don't have as much room for maneuver, which is quite depressing because it's kind of like, well, what can you do? I mean, what you can do is kind of the traditional, when you're reading a Jacobin article and they're like, well, in the future, the left needs to build its own institutions and do bottom up reforms. That's basically my answer. I mean, if you have things like they had in Argentina in 2001, right? If you have like direct control over factories or, local government or civil movements to, build new, concrete institutions and, take over buildings and things like that, then you've got the actual stuff, right? You've got the actual real production power and real political power. And then, if you create those different institutions, then what matters at the macro level matters less. But yeah. So I hope that was mildly you were just a bit disappointed. Sophia was disappointed with the assumption of government being good at it. I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. I expected this pushback a bit more because it's like a right wing and also a left wing libertarian critique, right? So it's like the anarchist critique or the anarcho-capitalist critique, where you're like, governments aren't that good at things. And look, I come from the UK, right? And I know a lot of you come from the UK or the US. And fuck if our governments are good at anything. They're incompetent and also corrupt, which is a really horrible mix because it's like when they if they're trying to do something, then it will just be corrupt, right? But if they're trying to do something like well, then it'll just be corrupt. But most of the time they won't even be able to try and do it well. So it will just be incompetent. And the line between corruption and incompetence is often difficult to see because it's like, well, you just do whatever the fuck you want and you sell everything to your mates because you don't have to be competent, but also because you've probably got a worldview that like fits with thinking that that's good because you're so insulated from consequences because you went to Eton and you had to like come on a biscuit every day and have everyone eat it. And therefore you have absolutely no shame. But anyway, rants about the Tories aside, so I just think there is a lot of evidence on how governments can do things effectively. I think a lot of the idea that, again, there's this kind of symmetry between left and right, and I don't want to sound like too much of a centrist, but like the Marxist theory, the state being a committee for managing the affairs of the bourgeois, but also the public choice theory, like state actors are only self-interested. I don't think they really work. I think actually if you look at the motivations for state actors, for voters, for state employees, and for politicians themselves, they are often very focused on the public purpose. They really are. Now, they may have an entirely misconceived notion of that. The institutions that back them may not be robust enough in order to ensure that their vision aligns with that of the polity, right? But it is there. So Leif Lewin is a really good source on that. That's why I kind of believe in governments more than anarchists of the left or the right. Jeez. Okay, wait. I'm gonna have to skip over now because I'm really behind on chat, everyone. But I appreciate all your questions. If it's really burning, then ask it again. But I just want to get to contemporary. Good morning, trans femcel. The Tories are national looters. Yeah, it's like that's the type of thing that like you know somebody down the pub says. They're like, they're just fucking looters and they're just giving it all to their fucking mates. And it's like, you're right. So I'm not going to pretend that you're not and try and give like some kind of poncy pedantic answer when it's just like they literally are. Is social democracy a viable option? Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of speaking to well, I'm not thinking of speaking. I think I am speaking to like a guy that he's kind of a Twitter mutual and a patron of mine, Keegs, later, who's I think more of a social democrat than I am. I'm like a democratic socialist, I think, whereas he's a social democrat. And I don't know. I mean, you may notice if you watch my free stuff video that I didn't focus too much on Scandinavia. You know, I wasn't like super. I sort of, because I know that the social democrats and lefties tend to do that. They're like, oh, we'll just look at Scandinavia, and that's fine, right? Those countries have got it pretty much right as far as I'm concerned, right? There's plenty to emulate, but I thought, can I do this without just going look at Scandinavia? With that said, what I'm going to do now is say look at Scandinavia, and not just Scandinavia, right? Central Northern Europe, right? If you take the Netherlands, you take Germany as well, you take France. To be honest, a lot of people don't reference France, but France actually, you know, does pretty well in terms of its welfare state, right? I know it has a huge problem with being like a post-colonial nation and having horrible racism and troubles with immigration, troubles with perceptions of immigration and things like that. But in terms of its welfare state, it does pretty well. So, you know, there's all these countries, and it's like, I know the USA is hegemonic, and I know that it's very big, you know, geographically, population-wise, economy-wise, it's a really, really outsized country, so it really matters what happens in it. But, you know, there are so many other countries that achieve social democracy, I think. Maybe not exactly as we'd like to see, but they are, so we can take lessons from them, absolutely. Oh, Jesus. The Argentinian economy, Maximiliano. You know what I'm going to say? Rather than placate you, I'm going to be honest with you and say no. And I'll tell you why. Because I don't think I know enough about the Argentinian economy, and I don't know enough about how I would go about studying the Argentinian economy. Like, if you look at my videos, I'm an applied microeconomist, right, and a behavioral economist with a kind of broad range of interests. But you can see that I know how to interpret... I know how to interpret like quantitative results, right? I'm pretty capable of doing that. You know, you can see that I can assess that evidence and assimilate it. In terms of macroeconomic evidence, internet and development stuff, I just don't have the skills. I think who you want to look at is, of course, Economics Explained. No, not really. But they probably have a video on the Argentinian economy. But that would just be the Wikipedia page read out to stock footage. Maybe worth having a gander, but no, actually don't. No, but who you really want to look at is Money and Macro. Yuri Shasfort, who's like a kind of buddy of mine, but he's a macroeconomist, and he's got a lot of videos on, like, he'll just have one on Turkey, you know, and one on Russia and the Russian sanctions and stuff. Like, he's good at doing that, so I leave that to him. Thank you so much, Vegan Stallion. Oh, right. Thank you so much for those donations. You know, before I put this on there, I'd never got a donation, because there's a donate button. I have a donate button. I think it's on Twitch. It's through Twitch or something, and like nobody was ever using it. And I was like getting a bit depressed. Apart from slightly poorer than I would have been, but now I realise that people use YouTube Super Chat. Thank you so much. By the way, hi Keegs. I did see you there. We'll talk in a bit. Another updated economics live with Noam Kissinger. Yeah. I talked to him about Russia when that kicked off. That's maybe a little bit of a insensitive way to talk about the war, but yeah, when Russia invaded Ukraine, I spoke to him. I think it was interesting. It was one of my first live chats, and it was also on a topic that I don't really know about. He's like a patron of mine in a Discord mod. I haven't seen him for a while on Twitter. I don't know what he's doing. I could ask him though. I'd be interested in talking about foreign policy with him. I know a lot. I actually remember quite well at the time. Quite a lot of people were quite angry at me for not being more like more lefty. But I think, you know, like with economics, I think if I had to pick two areas where I think the left does really badly, they'd be economics and foreign policy, right? And that's not to say, like, you guys know. Pardon me. Sorry, you guys know that my economics is pretty lefty. Now, it's not like full-on Marxist, communist, Leninist, whatever, like some people. But my point is that I can kind of use what's sort of mainstream economic analysis to come to lefty conclusions and flesh out some of the points that I feel are a little bit under-discussed or discussed in an unappealing way by the left. And I just feel like we need something for... We need something for foreign policy like that. And Noam is Noam Kissinger. I think he dropped that pseudonym like because he realized that it just really confused people. But he's you know, he works in intelligence, so he's more like pro US interventions than I am by every stretch of the imagination. But also, like, he's not like, you know, he's not. Firstly, I tend to agree with him on everything Ukraine conflict. Like, I think it's the first time in living memory that the US has been basically in the right. But you know, he was also he's very anti Henry Kissinger, which is again why his name was confusing. Anyway, let's not get sidetracked by foreign policy. Yes, I'd also struggle to read Spanish. I'm learning Portuguese at the moment because my partner's Brazilian, so I'm trying to learn Portuguese. I'm like, I've just started, so don't ask me to speak any Portuguese. Hey, Paul. Rice Restia, yeah, I mean, okay, so you're saying social democracy isn't sustainable because capital will push it in or pull it in one direction. I agree to an extent, and that, I mean, that's why I'm a democratic socialist, right? It's like, you can't just create, I think, welfare. I think you need to reorganize the workplace. I think you need to reorganize government. I think you need to reorganize communities, and you know, all of those things serve to create political power and political constituencies that push you beyond social democracy into a situation where, you know, capital is a much less powerful force. Leftists in Scandinavia are not particularly happy with the Scandinavian economy. Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course. You shouldn't be. You should never be. Thank you for donating, by the way. Somebody, Jesus Christ. Paul, thank you for donating. Just watched your convo with Vorsh from a year ago. Any chance of talking to him again? Yeah, I mean, Vorsh is a patron of mine, and I speak to him sometimes on Twitter or whatever. I think if I wanted to chat to him, I could do it again. I don't know what about. I was going to speak to FD Signifier as well at one point, because there was, I don't know if many of you remember or how many of you are on Twitter, but there was I shared that thought slime clip, and say that 5 times fast. Thought slime clip. And where Mildred was talking about how we don't need economics, and we can have we can have all the computer games we like purely based on people doing things for a hobby, and I was just like, fuck's sake. But FD Signifier said, you know, I'd like to speak to you about feasible forms of socialism or even anarchism, and I've just been, I don't know. Look, guys, I have 3 fucking jobs, all right? Like, I've just been busy, but I want to speak to him. And I know Vorsh and FD are kind of enemies, but I don't have any enemies on this platform because I am an adult. No shade, but like I'd happily speak to Vorsh about something similar, because I feel like we did speak about that, Vorsh, me and Vorsh, like feasible socialism. And I actually remember one thing I did in the Vorsh chat, which I felt at the time I went on about it for too long. I went on about like anarchists who are just like, there's that viral tweet that's like, how do you have like, how do you have like fucking like tractors in anarchism? And it's like, hey, I like making tractors. Oh, hey, I need a tractor. Thank you. Please give me one. And it's just like, okay, this is like juvenile. I hate using that word, but it's juvenile. And I went on about that in my chat with Vorsh, and then Thought Slime kind of like properly lent into that. Before I thought it was just people on Twitter, and I was like, oh my God, why do you do that? Anyway, I can't be asked to speak about people too much anymore. I don't really want to. Hassan. I say I don't have any enemies. On one of Dark Viper AU's videos, I just left a comment that was like, I've never watched Hassan, and because Dark Viper AU did that whole thing about like React videos being bad. I say, having just released a React video on my live channel, but it's kind of a one-off because I was making it for the purposes of a main video and just thought I'd share it on a secondary channel, for a much bigger creator than me, by the way. So Dark Viper AU's arguments don't really apply. But yeah, I just said like I've never watched Hassan, and based on his comments in response to Dark Viper AU, I think that's a good idea. But it's like the top comment now, which is yeah, I need to be careful as a content creator with what I say, because sometimes I just say like, I just think I'm like just firing off a little comment into the ether, and then I realize that like people kind of might attach more significance to it. Thanks for subscribing, Callum. Yeah, no justice. Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking about that the other day, that chat. I can't remember why. My chat with Money and Macro, who I mentioned earlier, we were saying inflation would be transitory. Now, yeah, we didn't. It was before the Russia-Ukraine war, so I think you can probably forgive us, like as you're implying, for that. I do think I was a bit too, what do they call it, dovish, sanguine about how long inflation would last. I think the supply chain issues really kind of manifested, and they became very difficult to unstick. All the bottlenecks at ports and stuff in California, and across the US, but a lot of it was in California and in China as well. And China carried on with lockdown much more strictly than a lot of Western countries, and so I think it was. Yeah, I was kind of wrong about that, how long that would last. And obviously we've still got inflation. I do still think it's transitory. I think people's time frames these days aren't, everyone's so impatient, and there's social media. It's like everyone's tweeting like it was the other day, wasn't it? CPI in the UK. And it's fine. Obviously you've got to share the information and you can offer your comment, but you've got to be careful, right? With these time series data, it takes a year. Hey, Alnirias. It takes a year before you can infer anything useful from such like noisy data, and you get people with the monthly CPI like, oh, inflation's finally coming down. Oh, inflation continues to go up. It's like, no. You've got to wait. Like, you've got to assess it. As a whole. When enough times come in. So all that's a way of saying I do think inflation is transitory, in the sense that it's not generalized. There isn't a wage price spiral or a profit price spiral, if you prefer that lingo. So lingo, Duolingo. Oh, fucking hell, mate, my mind's all over the place. Yeah, so there isn't a spiral. It's in specific sectors. It's driven mostly by food, energy, and things that use microchips, which is quite a lot of things. But like, some of it's starting to abate. The energy stuff, I don't know how long that's going to last. But my point when I say transitory was less to offer a time frame. It was more like, here's these specific factors. I think these are temporary. They can be ameliorated, and when they are, inflation will start to come down. I don't think we're heading for a spiral of any kind, and that would be for me like permanent generalized inflation, and that's when I'd be a much more hawkish, right? I'd even be in favor of interest rate increases, but I'm not really in favor of interest rate increases right now. Hassan is great, but Dark Viper AU is right too. Yeah, there we go. There's a nice solution. Yeah. Vegan Stallion, yeah. I've kind of softened on the reaction videos. I think sometimes Dark Viper AU is a really interesting series, right? He's like, sometimes you can see cases where it's like the original small creator has put something really interesting out there that required a lot of effort, and then some massive creator comes in and their video gets more than the original one, and the argument in favor of it is like a trickle down argument, like a rising tide lifts all boats, but that doesn't seem to be the case. It seems like the big creator kind of actually takes views from the small one. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with the odd reaction video, and it depends on how you manage it, who you're reacting to, if they're much bigger content creator than you, as long as you shout out their channel, blah blah blah. Likely lad. Well, I don't know. I don't see. Let me refute this, right? Because I don't think anarchism is. To bring it up again, the Thought Slime video. I don't think that's anarchism. It's not anarchism. It's certainly not fucking Marxism to eschew economics in that way. Anarchists, like, for example, one of my favorite websites, although I admit I haven't read it for a while, is libcom.org. I think that's a really interesting website. Lots of historical stuff about how anarchism has been organized in, the Spanish Revolution, for instance, is a source that people often use. I think Burkina Faso as well. That history, for me, is so valuable. And anarchists have a really valuable perspective. What I don't like is the really, really thoughtless type of anarchism where it's just like, everything would just work out, and it's like, it's fine. Take away capitalism, take away the state, and everything would just work out. Like, it's not that I disagree with the end goal necessarily. I mean, I'm not a full anarchist, but I have what James Scott sometimes called the anarchist squint, where you're like, you have to see everything from an anarchist perspective and question everything from an anarchist perspective, and even take steps to move towards anarchism as much as you can. But yeah, I know there's a really interesting history and body of thought there. That's kind of what frustrates me, actually, about bad anarchism. Anarchism gone wrong. Anarchism after dark, whatever you want to call it. No, anarchism after dark sounds good. Kian, definitely butchering your name. Thanks for your question about colonialism. I don't really... So reparations for colonialism, my main one would be... I'm in favor of global redistribution. I've said this, right? How we can implement it at what time scale is another question entirely. The first thing I would say is... Thank you, Lena. The first thing I would say is stop fucking like policies which extract right from the global south. Stop policies which, the way the IMF is structured, the way the World Bank is structured, the way the World Trade Organization is structured, patent law, fraudulent financial flows, tax evasion, those things. Correct those things, right? So stop taking from them. Oh, hello. Bit excited. Stop taking from them first, right? And I'm not trying to set up an either or, but I'm just saying if really obvious practical steps that don't require us to like overtly, tax the rich countries and give it to the poor countries, it is to stop those types of policies, stop those extractive policies. That would be my first thing. Thoughts on Arab Bastani's fully automated luxury communism? I haven't read it. I honestly, I thought it was a joke when it first came out, as in like it was the good one, right? It was like a reply to people who say, oh, under socialism, we won't have toothbrushes or computers or, bottles of water. Just showing you my bottle of water in case you didn't know what one was. We won't have anything. And then people were like, no, we'd have fully automated luxury communism. It's kind of like a joke, but it's making the point that you'd be like, you'd have stuff, right? You'd have like at least some of the stuff that we have now. And that's like, yeah, that's fine. But then I'm not sure. Again, I haven't read the book, so I don't want to say anything, but it just seems like a very consumerist vision of communism that for me would miss the point. I have read reviews of it that have made that point from like either an anarchist or an ecologist or indeed a Marxist perspective. But I don't know. It might be okay. I have my own Nightbot. Yeah, I know. I'm going up in the world. Yeah, vegan stallion. I do agree with you about Hassan. I'm ready to soften my opinion. Do I know of Glenn Well? Yes, I think he's an interesting guy. I've read articles by him, but not his books. I would speak to him at one point. Oh God, okay. Will this stream be uploaded in full? Yes, it will, Choir. It will be uploaded to my live channel called Unlearning Economics Live. So I don't, because for algorithm reasons, I don't keep these on. On the main channel. I wish YouTube. I can't say if there was one change YouTube made, I would like it to be this one, because there must be better ones. But I think I would like them to just split up the live, and they've kind of done it, but I don't know. I don't trust it. They split up the live stuff. So it's like, you've streamed this live. This is on the live part of your channel. It doesn't contribute to the algorithm in the same way. This isn't one of your main videos. That would be great, because then people get confused and they like, I unlist these because I have to because of the algorithm, and then people fucking like can't find them. But Unlearning Economics Live. In fact, Nightbot's just said it. The Black Cat Anarchy video. All right, let me give me a bloody. Lucky Black Cat. Why do I think it's Lucky Black Cat 87? Is that her Twitter handle? Okay. Capitalism is failing humanity. Post-capitalism, a detailed look. Right, here's the Lucky Black Cat video. It is 2.5 hours long, so be careful. Great, you're subscribed. Yeah, that's what I do. The buy shop, I unlist them. But there is a playlist with them on it on my main channel. But I also re-upload I don't upload gaming streams to live Unlearning Economics Live, because I think like, I don't think anyone wants to watch a gaming stream like well, no, not nobody, but I think it's not what you want from my channel, right? I'm not a gaming channel. That's just for a bit of fun occasionally, for people who want to join. Do I have any thoughts or studies on public transport being added to the list of free stuff? Yeah, good question. Definitely it's so I was talking about social spending in the video. I just, partly because it's under acknowledged the social return on investment for social spending, right? Thanks, Brad. And I feel like everyone knows that infrastructure can have returns, right? That's, if you get a Keynesian or a politician, Obama, Biden, arguing for stimulus, then they will be arguing for basically primarily infrastructure spending, build roads, build railways. So everybody kind of knows that. Whereas with the social spending, I think people tend not to acknowledge it as much, the return on social spending. I'm just having a look because there's this paper that I've got. Infra. Where is it? No. Wait, let me just show you what. Oh wait, hello. Actually, no. There's maybe because this hasn't been released yet. This paper, it was sent to me, so I maybe shouldn't show it to you. But I'm just looking for a good paper on physical infrastructure, but I might be misremembering here. Maybe this is just social. This is just social spending as well. This paper. I mean, I think the Roosevelt Institute might be one to look at. The Roosevelt Institute. If you look at we need stimulus. You know. Yeah, I don't have it. The case for progressive stimulus. What's this? So this, I think, here we are. Maybe try this. It's not just focused on physical infrastructure, but it is partially. You hope the high-speed rail. I mean, it's funny. One of the reasons I didn't speak about rail is because it would have required me to go on a rant about high-speed rail 2 in the UK, which I think. I mean, if people were asking, you know, some people might ask, "Oh, so are there any government programs you don't like?" Yes, that one. I can fucking tell you that I hate high-speed 2. I think it's bad for the environment and biodiversity. I think it's really London-centric and England-centric. I think they vastly overestimated the benefits. They definitely underestimated the cost by an order of magnitude. And they've had to fucking like cancel different parts of it. And it's looking like they're only going to do about a third of what they were originally going to do. It was a terrible idea. Again, back to the Tories being shit. Hippo character in tactical gear does tactical flanking maneuver hand gestures. I do not understand that at all. Is that a meme? Thank you for the donation. Oh, wait. Oh, I think the Roosevelt Institute report. Have I been modded by my own... I think I've been censored by my own YouTube channel. Wait, so here it is. Let me... in case you haven't... what am I doing? Screen. So this one. By Khan. So there's lots in here. But... You know, it's like... There's plenty on... Well, it's clean. It's clean infrastructure, right? So it needs to be green as well. But yeah, this green recovery one in particular. Get me to the actual report. Come on. Right. So, I think I remember... I think I read this... I read this for my Green New Deal video, which was like my third video. So yeah, but that one's the one I was talking about. In case you couldn't see it in the chat. Yeah, dumb fucks. Yeah, I don't necessarily hold that word in the same way I would the R word or the F word, but I don't use it because I feel like it's a bit mean and I mean, if it applies to anybody, it's the Tories. But like, yeah, it's a bit mean and a little bit ableist. And I feel like it's so streamer. It's too streamer for me. I can't just everyone just calling each other dumb fucks. Like that's my vision of hell. Everyone just like Destiny's and Vorsh's viewers both just calling each other dumb fucks. You love using it because you're a bad person. Okay, well, I mean, sorry, I should. Fair. The proposal of high-speed rail in Australia is a big meme because it's constantly proposed but never seems to be feasibly possible. Yeah. It's like, I don't know. I mean, it's funny because again, I'm a Keynesian. I'm a free stuff advocate. But that doesn't mean that every fucking thing that the government proposes has to be done, right? And I think in the UK, right, what we were doing was building a railway between London and Manchester, right? Now, Manchester is a northern-ish city, but it's also the biggest city in the north. It's the second biggest city in the UK, and it's not that far north, right? It currently takes 2 hours to get to Manchester. Now, of course, if it took 2 hours to get that distance in Japan, then, you know, the Japanese train company would have their license revoked. They'd probably be forced to go on national TV and apologize. And, you know, there would be like a public shaming campaign against the executives of the corporation that ran it, right? But that's not that's not the situation in the UK. And I think in terms of the UK, a 2-hour journey from London to Manchester that's a fairly smooth journey is absolutely fine. It doesn't need to be improved. There are other rail and infrastructure projects, not to mention social care, that need to be improved, right? I don't need that fucking journey lessened. The commuters who commute between Manchester and London, who are relatively well off, they don't need that lessened. That's not a good use of public funds. So, yeah, I don't know what the situation is like in Australia. I mean, are they talking about high speed across Australia? All the way across the desert? I mean, yeah, that'd be another fuck you to Aboriginals, wouldn't it, really? Like, if you've got that just straight through their land, you know, just absolutely straight through their land. But that seems infeasible even at today's, even with today's technology, but I don't know. Yeah, the Tories definitely deserve some meanness. But, you know, there are creative ways to be mean to people. You know, you can point out that David Cameron doesn't have lips. You know, you can, I mean, I don't know what to say about Boris Johnson. I mean, Jesus Christ. He looks like a kind of teenage boy who hasn't showered or cut his hair in about a year and has just been caught masturbating by his mum. Like, just permanently. That's just his look, right? So, yeah, you know, you want to insult people, but I'm just saying, sometimes with these words, aside from being a little bit bigoted, you know, they're not very creative, right? You can be more creative with what you say about people. Who's the Prime Minister at the moment? I forget. Rishi Sunak. He's quite well kept, actually, Rishi Sunak. I don't think I can insult his appearance. I have to say, he looks pretty sharp, even if he isn't. Well, there you go. I did it. Even when I was trying not to insult him, I did it. Yeah. Send me NG Spy. Send me because I'd like to know more about the high speed too. South Asia. No. Again, I mean, I'd say kind of what I said about Argentina earlier, in case you weren't here. But it's just like, I know a bit about South Asia. I've read that book, How Asia Works, which I think is really good. But I just, you know, I don't feel confident enough that I'm an authority on that subject. They're really interesting. Like, the Southeast Asian economies are so. When you say South Asia, do you mean the Indian subcontinent? Or do you mean? I was thinking Southeast Asia, but you mean maybe the Indian subcontinent? Because then definitely not. It comes up in. I'll tell you one place it comes up, and it has done recently. Thanks for following, Mr. Prism. What was I saying? India comes up in the poverty estimates, right? And there's a lot of poverty. There's a lot of info on poverty and the absolute poverty and how those numbers sit with the numbers for like the global numbers produced by the World Bank. India's a really interesting case study for that. So it is. I think it is mentioned in my Steven Pinker video, but I can't remember. But yeah, it's just madness the way that the official poverty, like the national poverty statistics, tend to depart from the World Bank's. And India is like a really good case study there. Blood Orange, I mean, I'm thinking about the environmental impact and also the opportunity cost. Bear in mind, right, so north to south in the UK is like not too bad. It's not amazing, again, like by international standards, but it's not too bad. But east to west, right? If you try and go from like fucking like let me show you. If you try and go, right, from like here, like Norwich, right? If you try and go from Norwich to like, let's say Liverpool, Norwich to Liverpool, right? If you try and do that, then the fastest way to do it, because the trains are so bad across the country, is to go down to London and then back up, right? And it's just so bad that I like the opportunity cost is not worth it, right? Like, I just think improve that and improve the rail in like Scotland and Wales, and down in the southwest as well before you start doing this, you know. And like, it's again, it's like it uses a lot of concrete. It is really bad for biodiversity, right? So those are like the costs that I'm just not willing to bear right now. My views on social issues or religion. I'll give you a very quick answer to that. Partly because I appreciate the question, but I've got a lot, and I guess ones that are more in line with the stream I'm going to devote more time to. But social, I mean, I'm pretty much an SJW, right? Nobody uses that term anymore. I'm woke. So yeah, I mean, like, you know, I'm pretty, I like to think of myself as like pro LGBTQ, you know, kind of pro BLM for instance, you know, and you know, I'm not, and pro, you know, feminism as well, right? I'm pretty much I'm about as lefty as SJW as you'll get on those issues. I just don't really focus on them because I don't have anything too interesting to say. On religion, I'm an atheist, but I keep it a secret because atheists are insufferable. I was very much a Richard Dawkins fan when I was younger. I said this answer would be short. I was a big Richard Dawkins fan. I was never. I mean, I liked watching Christopher Hitchens when I was younger, like in his debates and everything, and watching him like hitch slap people or whatever. But I didn't like. Never liked the support for the Iraq War, which is one of the things that made me uncomfortable with new atheism. But I'm still like, I don't believe in God, although there's obviously a place for spirituality and everything. I understand. I think I understand. Correct. I think I understand where religious people are coming from more than I used to. The Tories do great for a weasel collective pretending to be human politicians. That is exactly what we're looking for. Strange bloke. I love it. Did you... Wait, where the fuck am I? Jesus Christ. How Asia Works. Yeah, How Asia Works. Yeah, How Asia Works is like the definitive book on that, I think. The Kerala model. I only really know as much about it as Amartya Sen's told me, but it seems like a very like social services focused model that's done really, really well, right, in India. I mean, I can only say I'm pro from what I know. Hello, Barack Sivan. Oh, you like the Steven Pinker video? Thanks. I actually rewatched it recently. I rewatched a bunch of my videos recently. Jordan Peterson, Steven Pinker, and Worker Democracy, and I couldn't tell you why. I think I was just kind of assessing, reassessing, pardon me, what my videos used to look like and what they're like now. I was also kind of interested because somebody asked me why my voice is so much lower when I do voiceovers, and I think it's something to do with sitting down. So I'm sitting down now, and you can probably hear that my voice is quite low, but I think it puts quite a lot of strain on my core if I'm standing up. I also have a slightly different way of presenting, I think, when I'm presenting like as if I'm you know, talking to a camera and giving a presentation. I don't know. Interesting. People talking about capacity instead of journey time, but my understanding is that capacity is not that bad on those lines anyway. There's a House of Lords report on this where capacity doesn't seem to be that bad even in prime time on that line. But what? I don't know. How much cocaine should I sell to get the most money while also getting the least jail time if I'm caught? I think the obvious answer is that you should sell. I don't know how much, but you should obviously sell to children, because I think that's you know, they're the most willing customers. Yeah, they just made. I mean, they made a complete hash of High Speed 2, right? Okay, I think, you know, it is the politics of the thing, though, isn't it? Because it's like, well, do I want them to? Knowing the Tories are going to fuck it up, do I support it when there's a Tory government in power? Knowing they're going to do it in the worst way possible, they're going to do giveaways to their buddies, they're not going to care about the environment, and they're just going to be incompetent in general. If I had, you know, the Japanese government or executives who are in charge of their rail system doing High Speed 2, I'd be like, yes, obviously, please do it, right? So, you know, yeah. The one on capitalism. Oh yeah, I watched that one recently as well. I'll tell you why I remember why I rewatched the ContraPoints response. Was because that has an overproduced intro, and my new one, as you have seen, has a even more overproduced intro. So I was just getting an idea of like how that might look, and sent it to Hobby as well. I have a nice voice, thank you. Face stream, blah blah. Okay, see you, NG. Thank you for sending it to me. Thoughts on going into academia? Yeah, I think yeah, I might watch the clip NG Spy sent. I might watch it in a second. Yeah, Jake, so it's a good question. I think, firstly, which country are you in? It's a very pertinent question. In the UK, I can't help but feel like the sector's falling apart a little bit. And that's partly for reasons that I'm happy with as a lefty, and that's partly for reasons that I'm unhappy with as a lefty. So the reasons I'm happy with is because I think, well, no, maybe that's too simplistic a way to put it. Basically, the sector has been oriented towards markets, right? And fees have risen, and they've relied more on a government-sponsored but ultimately privately funded model, and they're run like businesses. And obviously, I'm not happy with that at all. But given that that's happened, I'm kind of happy for the sector to start falling apart, because fuck the people that run universities. All they do is pay themselves loads of money, hire really insecure staff, the type of contract I'm on, and also indulge in white elephant projects, just fucking stupid buildings, sometimes that are not even accessible. Sometimes they've got these like business buildings and you can only get in if you're a business student, and they're designed entirely for form instead of function. It's like you've got these big open spaces, these like designs where some architects just had his head up his arse, and they don't they could fit, it's like they could fit so many rooms in them for students to study in, right? Whether, you know, in seminars, taught seminars, or on their own, right? Or in groups or whatever, right? That they could fit so many rooms in, and instead you just have this wide open space that's just designed to impress investors or international students or whatever, right? So, like, I'm happy that the strikes are happening, that university staff are standing up for themselves, and that, you know, if the sector does fall apart because they've run it that way, then, you know, good as far as I'm concerned. But at the same time, I wish it hadn't gone in that direction in the first place. So all that's to say, going into academia in the UK, I wouldn't recommend it. And I'll recommend a YouTube channel, Andy Stapleton, who's like a guy who's dropped out of academia to become a YouTuber, a bit like me. But he he focuses a lot on academia and he gives loads of really good advice. Some of it's like practical advice for people who want to stay on academia. Some of it's like for people who want to leave, or who have left, and advice on how to do that. So he's really even-handed. He's really seems like a genuine guy. I quite like his channel, and get some info there. I think he's Australian, or he was in Australia or something, but go into academia if you really love the subject. You want to teach, you want to research, or both. You just love it. Then go into it. Sure, still, there's still space there. There's still interesting stuff going on for sure. And teaching is great, right? Teaching, actually standing in a classroom and teaching to a group of students in person is great. All of the bullshit administration and marking and stuff that comes with it is not, but the actual teaching is. So yeah, if you like those things or you like the sound of them, it's worth pursuing. But I think if you're kind of like not really sure and it's the path of least resistance, I'm not sure I would go into it, because it used to be an easy existence, right? Academia, it was like you're sacrificing money for a fairly cushy and well-regarded job doing something you love. Now it's turned into a much less secure job with much more rote work, like other jobs, and the pay is still quite bad, especially in the UK. See you later, DSFF. So yeah, I would carefully examine how much you want to do the job, because if you want a cushy job, go into the public sector, right? I don't. By the way, that doesn't contradict what I'm saying about free stuff, because I do think that all jobs should be like that. But the private sector is ruthless, right? If you want lots of money, go into the private sector. If you just love the subject and you like teaching and research in particular, then you go into academia. That's an interesting point, 001HKO. But I mean, some of these buildings, there's so much open space in them that I really can't believe that it couldn't have been done on a more efficient basis in terms of working space per square foot. Oh god, there was some I didn't miss that there was some drama with DSFF. Is there not enough professors who had tenure? As a fellow Brit who is follically challenged and is considering the full shave, at what age did you first shave your head? Really recently. Well, no, actually, it was COVID. It was a few. I mean, I cut it quite short, like a size 4, on a razor, during COVID. And then recently I've just started fully shaving it, but that's more, I don't like it like this that much. This is like, they say you should get your hair cut a bit shorter than you actually like it, so that you in a week afterwards, you're kind of at your optimum hair for a couple of weeks. That's where I'm at the moment. So it's a bit shorter than I'd like, but it's just easier to shave it all off. So yeah, 30-ish. And I haven't really looked back. I think the amount of maintenance it requires, which is to say none, and also the fact that you can do it yourself and therefore save on haircuts, is and if you're follically challenged already, then your haircuts aren't going to be that worth it. So it's you're really I really recommend it. Don't forget to put suntan lotion on your head though. Is my big bit of advice. Oh, thanks, Grim. Hey, my animator's in the chat, everybody. Grim Freeberg. Thanks for another banging animation. Yeah, Grim. All the little animations are Grim. He randomly contacted me after the Death of Econ 101 video saying, I can do some animations for you, and I'm willing to charge you under the market rate, because guys, as I'm sure you can tell, this isn't like a a hugely massive operation, and he really he does a great job and offers me very, very generous rates. So shout out to Grim. I read Twitch chat, Vapid Brain. I've got a good name, by the way. I've got Restream. I use Restream to do both, to stream to both. I think it's technically against the Twitch terms of service, but I don't think they enforce it except for partners. Well, famous last words. The channel Kraut. Absolutely no idea who they are, Dermot. Do hair transplants actually do anything? Yeah, I know people who've done hair transplants. These days, I think they work. I really do think they work. So if you want that, then okay. But whatever. Just take Chadwick's advice and shave your dome. Do you wash your scalp with body soap or shampoo? I always washed my hair with just shower gel anyway. So I've continued to do that. I've never really used shampoo. I'm such a boy. Planned economies. I mean, I'm not a massive fan of but it depends what you mean by planned, like centrally planned. Centrally planned. Let me look at Kraut. Everyone's talking about Kraut. Centrally planned economies. I think, I hate the way I sound like a right winger, but when everybody's like, let me subscribe to Kraut. I'll subscribe to Kraut. Thank you for following Scratch Fandango. I don't think that the computational problem is so complex, and not only that, it's inhuman. It's inhuman, right? And it doesn't adapt to the context of specific industries, specific people, what they want, what they think they want, their beliefs and stuff. It's so that's that algorithm that you need would have to reproduce society, as far as I'm concerned, and I don't think you can do that. Like, firstly, there's the computational power issue, where it's just exponentially more complex every time you introduce another location, another type of commodity, another type of labor. Timings, right? Cosmos Jalisi has a great essay on this called "In the Soviet Union, the optimization problem solves you." And I just don't believe we can do it now. And he says maybe in 200 years it might be feasible, but I still think it would be inhuman, because there's always this problem of like the algorithm trampling on people and like what they actually need. You've got to have a system that's responsive to people. Now, free marketeers argue that that's capitalism, and they have a point about markets. I think that markets fulfill a certain function quite well in a way that centralized algorithms can't. They also have, a bunch of points that don't work, like thinking that that's, the optimal system and and also that, markets and our current form of capitalism have to come together and blah, 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 blah. But yeah. Phenomics. Shout out to Phenomics as well, who did a quote. I also had a discussion with her about the falling rate of profit on my live channel. Which also, somebody was asking about the falling rate of profit. Maybe apart from my value video, you want to watch that? I don't know. We don't. No, I'm a processing power person. Although the data, I'm all of it. But yeah, I was talking about processing power just then. Because it's massive, like massively complicated problem. I don't think it's feasible, and then I don't think it would be good if it happened. Like, it's like people point to Walmart, right? They always do this Walmart. I'm going to talk about this in a video one day. I want to make a video about like positive anarchism and like what I see as good forms of communism, and I don't think it's central planning, because people always talk about Walmart, and I'm like, Walmart fucking tramples on their workers in the pursuit of profit. The reason their algorithms work, right, is for two reasons. Number one, they have one goal, right? Or maybe, one major goal and a bunch of subsidiary goals that serve that goal ultimately, which is to make profit. So you can design an optimization problem to do that quite easily. A human-centered socialist economy would have multiple aims, and therefore you immediately mathematically complicate the problem so much, right? So that's the first thing. So they have one goal. And the second thing is that goal like tramples on workers, right? It's not good. It's not socialist at all. And reorienting it, I think, is a bit more fundamental than maybe the authors of the People's Republic of Walmart might let on. But I will say that's a good and nuanced book. So I'm not. It's one of those things where it's more like the popular representation of that book is the thing that's problematic for me, rather than I think the book is really worthwhile as an intervention. And certainly, anyone who believes capitalism is just about markets, capitalism is just decentralized, like, they're obviously completely wrong, right? You've got these huge fucking planned organizations, and I don't think any the response of libertarians is just to be like, oh well, they have to respond to the market eventually. It's like, yeah, but they've got like loads of fucking room for maneuver in how they do that. And, the more market power they have, the more room for maneuver they have, and the more the internal organization matters. I mean, it's like saying politicians have to be responsive to the democratic needs of the people, right? Yeah, to an extent, but we know there are so many slips between like where the election and the actual behavior of the politicians. Thanks for subscribing, 2 people, including Squibs5. Clutch pants. Yeah, I was talking clutch pants. You've asked that a few times. I was talking about I was talking a little bit about that report by the Roosevelt Institute, a green recovery. Yeah, I think the Roosevelt Institute is a good place for that, but I'm not off the top of my head. I'm kind of blanking on the physical infrastructure stuff, although I know it's out there. I mean, there's so much stuff on urban. It depends on what you call physical infrastructure, right? Because I'm like urban planning and like transformations of cities and bike lanes and things like that. There's lots of stuff like that on Not Just Bikes, for instance, the channel. What do I think of Gary's view on inflation? Yeah, so Gary, full disclosure, I know him. I played football with him yesterday. And he is, I think I've spoken about this. I spoke about this with him. He was on my live channel. And I think he's too blasé about the mechanisms. He's just... So I think I'm getting everybody subscribing twice. So that's like a bit of I think it's a bit of a bug, which is a bit annoying. Because it's happened so many times that I'm sure it's not the individuals. Yeah, so he's kind of like, the government spent loads of money and therefore it's gone into inflation. And it's kind of monetarist, actually, even though he's kind of a renegade economist, right? I don't think... and I really like Gary. I think he's a really sharp guy. I think he makes some quite simple points quite nicely. I saw him on the BBC. I thought he was really good. He's a fellow Baldy. I really like him. I agree with him on a lot, but I think he could do with being a bit more specific about the mechanisms for inflation, because honestly, right, like he's always talking about housing inflation, and that's not necessarily counted or not counted that much in the official inflation measures, right? And then it's like, it's energy, it's food, right? It's like microchips. It's the stuff that's been impacted by the pandemic. And the reason he doesn't permit that explanation, he doesn't like that explanation, Gary, is because he's trying to hold our government accountable, which I appreciate, right? What inflation in the UK is worse than other countries because our fucking economy and public services are shite, right? And the Tories have fucked them up. But there are still these global factors, and I think I don't like the sort of there was money spent, therefore it has to result in inflation. I think that's very monetarist. How could I explain? Hello, Okay, I'm not going to try and say your name. Um, Good morning. How could I explain to my friend that socialistic elements in a mixed economy does not equal a full-blown socialist economy? Like, what policies are inherently socialist? Well, I think there are two things to say there. So the first that I would say would be like, well, first, the socialism was always like public, democratic, or worker control over the means of production, right? So it was like workers or the state, or maybe local communities taking over factories and offices and farms and whatever other workplaces you can think of. Now, it seems to me that that's not what's happening when you have public services, right? The state is funding, possibly running, but like I said in the video, not necessarily running schools, hospitals, whatever else. Thanks for subscribing, and that's not socialism. That was never the original definition of socialism. So that's one thing to say. But they might be so steeped in like the US-centric or just modern notion of socialism that they just believe that any public spending is socialism. But then you have to ask yourself, well, okay, isn't every economy to some degree, taking their perception as a given, isn't every economy to some degree mixed? Because clearly in a mixed economy, there are capitalist elements and there are socialist elements. And there are also democratic elements, like of representative democracy. And there are also technocratic elements, right? So lots of systems have a mixture of different types. And so why would you define them only by the part of them that is socialist? Why would you not define it by the part that's capitalist? So I don't understand. It's like as soon as there's a little hint of socialism, now it's a socialist economy. But why not as soon as there's a little hint of capitalism, it's a capitalist economy, So, yeah, I there's two arguments that hopefully help. Okay, I can't talk about... No, I mean, Adventure Josh, I know people don't want society run like Walmart. I know they don't. The authors of that book don't. I forget their names. But they don't, but I feel like the implications of this aren't thought through. Why can Walmart be planned? Why can Walmart be planned in the way that it can be? That's my question. Thank you for donating so much, Ravio Loop. I swear I'm so easily amused by names on this. I literally just find all of them amusing. I mean, John Miller, I'm not gonna lie, John Miller, thanks for your comment, but I don't find your name amusing. It's probably about as not amusing as a name can get. The contradiction of capitalist competition is that the purpose of competition is to eliminate it and make yourself a planned economy monopoly. Yep, I'll accept that. Sometimes Marxists are a bit vague about the contradictions of capitalism, but I accept that one. Yeah, competition leads to monopoly is a fairly good contradiction. Oh yeah, I was in Amsterdam recently, Vanderlei, and it's so beautiful. You guys seen the Ted Lasso episode in Amsterdam, which is a recent one? I thought that was it was very, very nice. Gary Stevenson, trans femcel, he has a YouTube channel called Gary's Economics. Similar amount, similar size to mine, but very different type of video. He uploads a video every week that's just him chatting like I'm chatting now. But he's been on the BBC. He also has actually a very good interview with Novara Media with Aaron Bastani. Thanks, Phenomics. Oh, there's follow and sub. Oh, maybe I need to... thank you, Fergus Thompson. Maybe I need to disable one of them because it's like... What do I think of Second Thought? Mixed feelings. Yeah, mixed feelings. Oh, I watched... what's that? That channel that I feel like it's new, but maybe it's not new. It's called More Perfect Union. And I think like a few people, so Second Thought, Mooncat, and FD Signifier have all done videos with them, like short videos. And I watched Second Thought's one on Elon Musk, and I thought it was really good, and had a lot of interesting information about how Elon Musk is basically a bubble. So yeah, like, it's not... I don't really disagree with everything they say, but I just... Sometimes it just... Sometimes I conflate him and Hakim as well, but sometimes I feel like they lean too much into the tankyism or just the overstate their case. I mean, the video on worker democracy, right? I was just like, you're just repeating a couple of little factoids you've had, and I don't think I don't want to overstate the case for worker democracy. Like, it's going to cure your fucking cancer, or like your pet's cancer or whatever. Like, I felt like that wasn't that well researched a video, and then that makes me doubt other stuff they put out. But also it's a different type of video to mine, right? Like, mine are fucking, let's be honest, slightly boring dives into like statistical evidence, or not everybody necessarily does that, and not everybody should do that. Yui, are you keeping this video up? So to reiterate, everyone, this will go on the channel Unlearning Economics Live. Nightbot should be linking it like every 20 minutes or something. Yeah. Thanks for donating. Did I miss a donation? Right, I'm gonna fucking skip the chat again. Yeah, Grim, you're right. So Gary Stevenson does talk about that type of inflation, but this is the issue. So why that doesn't seem to explain energy inflation, food inflation, How do I feel about the neoliberal account on Twitter and the neoliberal organization? I quite like some of them. I think the leaders of it are not too bad. I think if you take your modal Reddit neoliberal with a blue globe emoji, like, they're pretty cringe, and they're like super smug and also don't know what they're talking about. I interact with those people quite a lot. They're the econ 101ers, right? They're like the people who've like taken one economics 101 class, watched a bunch of Milton Friedman videos on YouTube, and posted a few times on the neoliberal Reddit, and now they think that they've hacked economics, and they know absolutely everything, and they can accuse everybody else of being really ignorant and stupid for not understanding it. So yeah, those people can fuck off. But then, a lot there, your modal Marxist who, has done the equivalent on the fucking Marx subreddit is the same. Your modal anarchist who, has done the same on the anarchist subreddit is the same. And well, the less said about your modal right winger, the better. Right. So yeah, so let's not define them by that. I don't hate the neoliberals, but they are distinct from neoliberals like Thatcher. Like, this is one thing that frustrates them about me, because I think they're so far departed from that now. Like, I would argue that especially given what I said at the end, my free stuff video is actually quite compatible with their vision for capitalism, it's very not Thatcherite, right? So, like, yeah, I don't think they're really in line with like historical neoliberals. And it's fine if that word comes to mean something different. I don't care about that. Thank you, Michael. But it's important to point out. Yeah, it's true of MMTers as well, yeah. Except you're actually correct. Well, that's true. Do I know what MMT says when the GDP debt hits 1,000%? Well, I think that MMTers would say that doesn't really matter. I don't think... when you're talking about a country's capacity to pay, you're talking about its tax base, and its... payments, the flow of payments on bonds and the interest it's paying, and its ability to finance its own debts and inflation. So I would guess an MMT would say, in principle, that doesn't matter. Now, in practice, I think if a country's debt to GDP hits 1,000%, there might be some stuff going wrong, right? And it depends on what country it is, right? If that happened to Argentina, Argentina wouldn't get that far, right? The things go wrong for them when their GDP debt to GDP ratio hits 10%. So like for 1,000%, they'd be in serious trouble. Yeah, inelastic demand, Lunar Shroom. It's interesting that comment that you've given, because thanks, Lucas. I think inelastic demand, like it's sometimes people call it lexicographic preferences, where it's like healthcare is like there was an example given by Robert Prush where he's like, okay, so if I'm going to buy like, let's say Bud Light to be politically controversial versus normal Bud, right? Say you're buying Bud Light versus normal Bud, right? Obviously, there's a rate of substitution there, right? The price of one goes up, you're going to go, right, no, I'm going for the other one. That's obvious. But what about Bud Light and like healthcare for your dying sister? What's the rate of substitution between those? The answer is there basically isn't one for all intents and purposes. You will give everything. And AOC said this actually, right? And I think that's actually a really fundamental principle which is under-acknowledged in the field of economics. Like, obviously, inelastic demand, lexicographic preferences are things that you can have within that system, and they are mentioned, at least inelastic demand is in an introductory course. But like the implications of really inelastic demand for like needs, right? Like healthcare being the primary one, but education to varying degrees, right? And how that leads to, monopolistic, on their surface, monopolistic practices, how that leads to consumers being exploited, and therefore why you need like public provision is an important point. Negative taxes, well, that would just be a UBI, wouldn't it? If it's below a certain threshold of income. Negative income tax, that's actually something Milton Friedman proposed. I almost talked about Milton Friedman and UBI, but I was like, oh no, I can't be like fucked with this like long comparison. Yeah, JDM, yeah. Okay, so it's not that debt to GDP doesn't matter, it's just that it's not the primary metric. So you look at it, but you look at a whole bunch of other stuff as well. Need-based demand, Lewis Brown. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Really good way of putting it. Where's Keegs gone? I might try and speak to him. I've added him. Is anyone like... Honestly. Yeah, I might speak to him. Oh, Keegs goes by they, them. My mistake. Sorry, Keegs. If you're here. Earlier I was doing he, him. I think I added them. Yeah, I thought I'd just get Keegs in because they're a filthy social democrat, and I wanted to chat to them for a while. So I thought I'd merge it with this. Also, it keeps things interesting if I get somebody else to talk other than me. My throat's beginning to hurt, guys. I need to look at Veblen and Commons and their value theory. Well, Kristen, I think you're right. I think I do. Oh, what do I think of the UBI critique that it could trap people in a permanent underclass without labour power? Ooh, okay. When you say without labour power, Michael, do you mean isn't that quite like a right-wing argument though? It's kind of like the poverty reduction or the welfare state is a trap and people don't work, therefore their skills disappear and there's skill attrition and therefore they don't get employed because they don't have their labour power to sell. I'm afraid I don't fully understand the argument, because I would say that UBI is a trampoline, right? I think it's more of a, it enables you to do what you really want to do without the fear of poverty, right? So that wouldn't mean that you didn't have your labour power, right? You would still be able to work. Because would you consider making an entire video on MMT? Because I think that'd be absolutely awesome. So that firstly, I will say my first ever Patreon only video was on MMT. So there's like a 20-minute video of me just chatting before I even showed my face on about MMT and what I think of it. So if you want that, then you know where to get it. But also, I mean, I think MMT is something that's likely to come up in my future videos. Like, I do want to make a video about money. MMT will definitely come up in that. Even before that, soon, I want to make a video about macroeconomics. And I think it's worth surveying how MMTers, I think, basically seem to be winning every macroeconomic debate. And MMT is like a close cousin of post-Keynesianism, right? Which I subscribe to a little bit more, but that, you know, the differences between them are academic. And well, they're academic and political, actually, I should say. So that so there are differences between them. But I think for me, because they're not worth emphasizing in the political arena, because I agree with their politics for the most part. So yeah, like, I think MMTers have won the macroeconomic debate. I think they've won the debate about deficits and government spending. I think they're starting to win the debate about inflation as well. Like, this whole idea of profit-driven inflation, which was really dismissed by economists. Now, I think Isabella Weber, who I really want to speak to, I keep pestering her, but she said yes at one point, but I think she's just super busy now because she suddenly got really famous. But the corporate profits-led explanation of inflation has started to be taken more seriously, largely thanks to her. And I'm not sure if she considers herself a full-on MMTer, by the way. I think she's more of an institutionalist. But, you know, I think it dovetails quite nicely with the MMT perspective and the post-Keynesian perspective of inflation as distributional conflict. So I think MMT, you know, it's kind of winning, right? In a way. Obviously, you've still got, you know, Republicans who, I mean, fuck knows. Like, again, the less said about them, the better. But like, and there's also, I mean, but there is right-wing MMT now as well, though. There's even right-wing MMT. There's like, we lower taxes and we don't have to fund that at all. We can just reduce taxes and fund it with deficits, right? So it's like, it's interesting how that debate has shifted massively, because everyone was talking about deficits, and I know there's the whole debt ceiling thing, but it's purely political now. And like, people are much more focused on inflation. Brazilians everywhere. Yeah, Brazilians are everywhere. Does James Medlock have anything besides a Twitter? No, and he also won't speak to me. I mean, he won't speak to anyone, so I'm not taking it personally. Yeah, T-Rex, UBI, again, in response to Michael's point, I think, yeah, UBI would increase bargaining power because it gives you an outside option. Even if it's only a basic income, is still better than nothing, right? You know, you're like, I can leave and go and, you know, live. Okay. Yeah, I really think it's do I have a transcript? Kristen, yeah, a transcript. Yeah, I can do that. I started doing the my scripts for my videos at one point, but I didn't follow through with it. Like so many things I've started. But thank you anyway. And thank you, Stuart, for donating. What are you saying? You've asked a question. Where am I? My geez, it's hard. I appreciate all your questions, by the way, and I'm sorry if I don't get round to them. There are almost 300 people in the chat, and yeah. Is there a real versus analytical economics aspects? I'm assuming you meant economics there, Stuart. Every time I look into it, it's a self-referential ratios or a subjective statement. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble making sense of that. Are you economics aspects? Are you talking about economic theory? Did Medlock speak to Novara Media? Whoa, hello. Whoa. Jeez. Right. Okay. I don't know. I can't see that. He spoke to. You're asking about economic theory, so it's self-referential. Are you talking about like how economic theory defines itself in terms of economic theory, and a lot of the whole edifice kind of seems to be circular in the sense that like they'll be like, oh, we estimated the coefficient of relative risk aversion, and it's like, well, okay, this only has meaning if you accept economic theory. Like that would be my interpretation of what you're saying, which is true, right? It's like sometimes I feel like economists by the way, this is not just a mainstream thing, although mainstreamers do it much more. People assume the theory when they test the theory. So Marxists with the labor theory of value are actually the worst with this. Like, they literally, anything that happens in the data, they're like, it's like the theory is assumed in the interpretation of it. So if you take the rate of profit, which loads of people have asked me about, it's like the rate of profit goes down, right? They're like, well, there you go. It's Marx's tendency of the rate of profit to fall. You're like, okay. But then if the rate of profit doesn't go down, or it goes up, they're like, well, it must be a countervailing tendency. And you're like, well, you don't know that. You're interpreting basically everything that happens through the lens of the theory, so it's unfalsifiable. What you need to do is measure those things and account for them, right? And then mainstreamers do it with, like I said, like the coefficient of relative risk aversion. It's like, well, I mean, there's a statement that I think Nathan Tankus tweeted it out once, but it was a statement from like Robert Lucas, the guy I mentioned in the video, and he was like, evidence shows that shocks to the economy have the following form. And it's like, no, evidence plus your model shows that shocks have the following form. You have to assume that there are these productivity shocks that take place in your theory. Otherwise, if you had a labor theory of value framework, you'd be interpreting those movements completely differently, maybe in terms of the rate of profit or labor values or whatever, right? So it's like, people need to fucking unlearn this shit. Yeah, Austrians are really bad with it as well. So bad. They're like, the rate of interest is the reward for patience, and then they just assume that, and you're like, whoa, hey, all right, Mr. Protestant. Like, why is, it's just there's lack of critical perspective on the framework that you're using. Yeah, okay, Stuart. Well, I'm glad I could answer your question. Yeah, no, it was I think JDM was thinking of James Medway, who James Medway, I've met him a couple of times in real life. I'd potentially speak to him, but I said the thing. He said it. It's like, is anyone I'm such a massive fan of those memes where it's like a picture of Darth Maul, when Darth Maul appears in the hangar in episode 1, and it just has the subtitle like, I am the Phantom Menace. Or yeah, any joke like that will very easily make me laugh. So yeah, I need to do it. Like, every stream I should just turn to the camera and be like, we need to unlearn economics. Several times, if possible. If people don't have to pay to breathe, they'll be trapped in a permanent underclass with no labour power. I take it that's a joke. But thanks for donating. I like the way you're all roasting each other in the super chats. Like, just keep doing it, just keep paying to take the piss out of each other, and then I get some of the money, apparently. Oh yeah, random critical analysis, huh? Yeah, I have started to read that. It's so long, and like I mean, because I'm not in the US, like my interest in the US health system is kind of limited. Like, I have as much interest in the Rwandan healthcare system, and I know people from the US have a hard time understanding that, but like, I'm most interested in my own health system, or in one that I can learn from, or in one that's like the most impactful from a humanitarian perspective, like Rwanda being a good example. I don't think the US fills any of those criteria, so I didn't bother reading the whole thing. I do remember sending it to my health economist buddy, and he was like, okay, there's a little bit of sense in here, but basically, like, you're just ignoring the fact that most people, like 10% of people in the US, just don't have health insurance. But yeah, I mean, I think you've got to be careful, right, with health, right? You do have to be careful. I think it's worth reading stuff like that. That one's a bit long, but like counterpoints, right? Because it's like, US healthcare is too expensive, Are there no positive aspects of that system as compared to another one? Well, I think the thing about the US is capitalism, right, is like capitalism, hyper-capitalism, right, in terms of the OECD. It's much more capitalist and free market than other OECD countries, even the UK. And one of the things that I think about capitalism is like, if you pay, then you get the best healthcare possible. So the US does have some of the best healthcare in the world, right? If you can pay. So you've got some of the most advanced treatments that you can have, right? And that is true, right? And the pharmaceutical companies that make loads of money also do some of the most cutting edge research in the world, which can be exported to the rest of the world. Now, that doesn't mean because of that benefit that the current system is good. You know, you might want to sacrifice some of the most cutting edge treatments for basic care for, people who don't have care right now. In fact, you not only might you do want to, right? So it's like, but you've got to be careful with being like, oh, healthcare in the USA is just rubbish. It's like, no, healthcare in the USA is extremely unequal. And at the top end, and even maybe in the middle, you get some great, amazing, and from a humanitarian or technological perspective, fantastic, fascinating treatments. Of course you do. But then is that okay? Is that acceptable as a price for, throwing 10% of the population under the bus? Absolutely not. And you can get more gains for them. Again, I'm not, I stuck to just trying to advocate demand side socialism in my video. I'm not an expert on the US healthcare system, but I think that you don't want to just be like making these blanket statements like it's the worst in the world, it's the best in the world. Healthcare systems are so complicated, and if you can acknowledge that there are some benefits which I have seen evidence that those benefits are exported around the globe, like the research and stuff. Maybe there are other ways of achieving that, but yeah, you can acknowledge there are some benefits to it. Why choose? Well, I think you have a limit, Khalida, to the amount that you can spend on health, right? So there's the park problem. We all know the consequentialist park problem. If you can't spend, you are killing people by having a park instead of whatever healthcare you could buy or whatever, other safety measures you could enact that save lives. You are killing people by just frivolously having a park instead of those things, right? And so it's like you have to draw the line at the amount of resources you devote to health at some point. And I think with the US, those resources that are devoted, they are distributed quite unequally. And so you're saying, why not both? Now that would require, say, keep the healthcare at the top and have more given at the bottom. Now that might be an okay move, right? Depending on how many resources you want to devote to healthcare. But the US spends so much of its GDP on healthcare, more than any other country, I think, in total. And it's like, do you really want to increase that? Like, yeah, okay, it would save lives, but we don't only devote all of our GDP to healthcare because there are other things in life. We accept that at some point we want a park for the people who are alive over the extra year of life for whoever benefits from some treatment.